All right, let's dive into the world of Dionysus.
Dionysus,
The Greek god.
a wine and festivity.
And so much more.
We've got some really cool sources today,
Yeah.
including excerpts from a mythology website.
Oh, cool.
And then we've got this whole deep dive into his Wikipedia page.
Sounds fun.
It's there's a lot more to Dionysus than meets the eye.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're talking multiple births,
Multiple
trips to India rituals involving tigers and fox skins.
fox skins.
This is not your average god story.
Definitely not.
So get ready to learn about the god who was both loved and feared,
Both loved and feared.
and whose influence can still be felt today.
That's right. And what's so interesting about Dionysus is that while we often associate him with revelry and partying, he's far more complex than just a party god.
Right.
He's also linked to orchards, vegetation, fertility, even theater.
Wow.
But then there's the flip side. Insanity, ritual madness, ecstasy.
Yeah.
It's a lot to wrap our heads around.
It really is. You know,
What did the ancient Greeks see in this god?
what
Why such a mix of
exactly.
seemingly opposite things?
Yeah, it suggests that the ancient Greeks recognized that human nature isn't always neat and tidy.
Yeah.
Dionysus embodies both the liberating and destructive aspects of our being,
Oh, wow.
reflecting the duality inherent in life itself.
Okay.
Think of it like nature's cycles,
Yeah.
creation and destruction, joy and sorrow, all intertwined.
That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
And speaking of intriguing aspects,
Yes.
his name itself, Dionysus,
Yes.
is fascinating.
Dios seems to connect him to Zeus.
Right.
But what about that nusos at the end?
That's where things get a bit mysterious.
It does.
Some scholars connect it to Mount Nysa, where Dionysus was raised by nymphs.
Right. But the origins of the name are still debated,
Oh, really?
with some even speculating about pre-Greek roots.
Wow.
Imagine a god whose name might echo cultures even older than the ancient Greeks.
Wow, that opens up a whole new layer of intrigue.
Absolutely.
And speaking of layers, there's another puzzle with Dionysus,
Right.
his origin story.
Right.
We see evidence of his worship in Mycenaean Greece,
Mm-hmm.
which, for those unfamiliar, is a really early period of Greek civilization.
Right.
Yet so many myths portray him as an outsider,
An outsider.
almost a foreigner struggling to be accepted.
Yeah, why is that?
Why is that?
I mean, his outsider status is a key theme in his stories.
Right.
It connects to ideas of inclusion and how societies grapple with change.
Okay.
Dionysus, in many ways, represents the introduction of new ideas and practices, which often meet resistance from those in power.
Wow.
And in a historical context, it's intriguing to consider how this might reflect Greece's contact with other cultures
Okay.
and how those interactions shape their beliefs.
It's almost like his stories are a reflection of the challenges of cultural exchange
Absolutely.
played out on a mythical stage.
That's a great way to put it.
And speaking of reflecting different aspects,
Yeah.
can we talk about his epithets?
Sure, let's talk about those.
It's like each one is a mini title giving us a glimpse into his diverse personality.
I like that.
Some are pretty straightforward, but others are downright baffling.
Definitely. And they give us clues to the various ways Dionysus was perceived
Okay.
and worshipped in different regions and contexts.
Right. Bassarius, which means
full skin wear.
fox skin wearer.
That's not something you hear every day.
Not every day.
What's the significance of that?
Well, the Bassarius epithet ties Dionysus to wild, untamed energy.
Okay.
His followers, known as the Maenads, wore foxskins during their ecstatic rituals.
So these rituals weren't just about partying.
No, they weren't just about partying.
They were about transcending the ordinary and connecting with the divine in a visceral way.
Exactly.
So it's about tapping into a primal instinctual energy.
Yes.
That makes sense when you consider his connection to themes like madness and ecstasy.
Right.
But then you have epithets like Bacchantes, meaning cowborn.
Cowborn.
How does that fit in?
Yeah.
Bacchantes likely refers to a specific myth or aspect of his birth. But it reminds us just how multifaceted his origins were.
Okay.
And then there's Anthroporistes,
Bacchantes.
the man destroyer,
The man destroyer.
which seems pretty terrifying at first glance.
It does.
Yes.
But doesn't that also tie back into the duality we were talking about earlier?
It does.
The idea that creation and destruction, joy and sorrow are often intertwined.
Anthroporistes might sound scary, but it highlights that Dionysus represents more than just lighthearted fun.
Huh.
He embodies the full spectrum of existence.
Wow.
including the darker, destructive aspects of life.
It's like even his names and titles reflect that he isn't just one thing.
Exactly.
And then, of course, we have his festivals.
Oh, yes, the festivals.
Which are famous for their wild celebrations.
Oh, the celebrations.
We've got the rural Dionysia, the city Dionysia, the Anthesteria.
It's a whole calendar of festivities.
But what did these festivals actually entail?
Well, the festivals were central to Dionysian worship.
Oh.
Each one had its own unique rituals and significance,
Okay.
offering us a window into ancient Greek beliefs and values.
Let's take the Anthesteria, for example.
Okay, the Anthesteria.
I've read that it involves celebrating spring and wine, but also the dead rising from the underworld.
That's right.
That's a pretty wild mix.
Yeah, a wild mix.
It was a 3-day festival with a complex blend of celebration and reverence.
Yeah.
It marked the beginning of spring and the opening of new wine, but it also involved welcoming the spirits of the dead back into the world.
That's right.
Wow, so they're toasting to new life while also acknowledging death.
Exactly.
It seems like the ancient Greeks really embraced the cyclical nature of existence.
It seems so.
But the Anthesteria wasn't the only intriguing festival, right?
Right. There were also these mysterious events called the Bacchic Mysteries.
The Bacchic Mysteries.
Shrouded in secrecy.
Okay.
And even today, we only have glimpses of what transpired during these rituals.
Oh, really?
We know they were connected to personal transformation and exploring profound life questions.
Wow.
Particularly the themes of life, death, and rebirth.
It's fascinating that these mysteries were open to both men and women.
Yes, it is.
What do you think that tells us about the appeal of Dionysus and his worship?
Well, the inclusivity of the Bacchic Mysteries is significant.
Okay.
It suggests that Dionysus offered a space for individuals to connect with something larger than themselves.
Wow.
Regardless of their gender or social standing.
So we've got this incredibly complex god with a mysterious name,
Right.
a range of intriguing epithets,
Yes.
and these wild festivals celebrating everything from the harvest to the dead.
That's right.
But what happens when this Greek god makes his way to Rome?
Well, when Dionysus crosses the border, he gets a Roman makeover and becomes
What?
Bacchus.
I always thought he was a separate Roman god.
Well, the Romans identified Bacchus with their own god, Liber,
Okay.
who was also associated with wine, freedom, and coming-of-age traditions.
So they saw a kindred spirit in Dionysus.
They do.
Recognizing those shared themes of liberation and revelry.
Exactly.
So Bacchus is essentially the Roman version of Dionysus.
That's a good way to put it.
But didn't things get a little out of hand with those Roman celebrations?
Oh, yeah.
I've heard stories about the Bacchanalia and how wild they got.
The Bacchanalia were notorious for their unrestrained revelry, involving music, dancing, and plenty of wine.
Oh, wow.
They became so wild that the Roman Senate eventually stepped in and banned them.
Wait, they actually banned the Bacchanalia?
They did.
What was it about these celebrations that made the Roman authorities so uncomfortable?
Well, that's a great question.
Were they just being party poopers?
I mean, to understand their reaction, we need to consider the social and political landscape of Roman society at the time.
Okay.
The Bacchanalia weren't just about having a good time.
Yeah.
They challenged social norms and blurred the lines between social classes.
So it was more than just the wild partying. It was about challenging the established order.
Exactly. The Bacchanalia represented a kind of freedom and transgression that the Roman authorities saw as potentially subversive.
Right.
They feared the potential for social upheaval.
I see.
And viewed suppressing these festivals as a way to maintain control.
It makes you wonder if the Romans truly understood the deeper spiritual aspects of these celebrations, or if they simply felt threatened by the challenge to their authority.
That's a really interesting question.
So we've talked about Dionysus as this god of wine, festivity, even destruction.
Yes.
But there's another layer to him that we haven't touched on yet.
Okay, what's that?
His connection to the underworld.
The underworld.
He even descends to Hades to rescue his mother.
That's right.
That connection to the underworld is crucial to understanding the full scope of Dionysus.
Absolutely.
He's not just about celebration and ecstasy.
No, he's not.
He embodies the full cycle of life, death, and rebirth.
That's right. And remember, in ancient Greek thought, life and death weren't seen as separate, but as parts of a continuous cycle.
So by venturing into the underworld, Dionysus represents this cyclical nature of existence.
Exactly. He's not afraid to face the darkness.
Yeah.
Because he understands it's an integral part of the whole.
He embodies the journey through darkness and back into the light.
He does.
Reminding us that even in the face of death, there's always the potential for renewal and transformation.
I like that a lot.
And this theme is echoed throughout his myths.
Yes.
Often in surprising and symbolic ways.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm definitely hooked. Now, let's talk about those myths.
The myths.
The myths surrounding Dionysus are just as rich and varied as the god himself.
They are.
Take his birth story, for example.
His birth story.
There are multiple versions.
Multiple versions.
Each with its own dramatic twists and turns.
Lots of twists and turns.
We've got a jealous Hera, a fiery demise, and Zeus sewing him into his thigh.
Zeus sewing him into his thigh.
That's gotta leave a mark. It's definitely not your typical birth story.
Definitely not.
But what are we to make of all these different versions?
Yeah.
Are they meant to be taken literally, or are they trying to tell us something deeper?
That's a great question.
I mean, instead of viewing these myths as literal historical accounts,
Right.
we can see them as symbolic representations of the ways the divine can manifest in the world.
I like that.
So it's about looking beyond the surface of the story and trying to understand the deeper meanings embedded within it.
That's right. These myths offer us a glimpse into the ancient Greek worldview.
Wow.
Their understanding of the cosmos.
Okay.
The human condition and the relationship between humans and the divine.
It's like they're using these fantastical stories to explore profound philosophical and psychological ideas.
Exactly.
Take the myth of Dionysus' descent into the underworld to rescue his mother, Semele.
Okay, Semele.
It's not just an adventure story.
No.
It's a meditation on the power of love.
Love.
The possibility of redemption and the eternal cycle of life.
Life, death.
And rebirth.
Rebirth.
Right. And it reinforces that connection to the cyclical nature of existence that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
The Dionysus ventures into the realm of the dead.
He does.
But he also returns bringing his mother back with him.
Bringing her back.
He doesn't just accept death.
Nope.
He challenges it.
He does.
Demonstrating the possibility of transcendence.
Transcendence.
And this theme of resurrection and renewal is echoed in other myths as well.
It is.
For example, there's the story of Ompelos, Dionysus's beloved companion, who tragically dies.
Oh, that's right.
Dionysus, in his grief, transforms Ompelos into the first grapevine.
The first grapevine.
Oh, yes. That's where the connection between Dionysus and wine becomes even stronger.
Yes.
From death comes new life.
New life.
The grapevine.
The grapevine.
Which then provides the fruit that's transformed into wine.
Into wine.
A symbol of celebration and ritual.
Celebration and ritual.
And wine itself, through fermentation, embodies this process of transformation. Reflecting the cyclical nature of life and death that's so central to Dionysian mythology.
I like that.
It's amazing how these ancient stories can be interpreted on so many levels.
Yeah, they really can.
They're not just entertaining tales.
No, they're not.
They're packed with symbolism and profound insights into the human experience.
Absolutely. And the influence of Dionysus extends far beyond mythology.
Oh, really?
He has inspired artists, writers, and thinkers throughout history.
Oh, wow.
And continues to resonate with us today.
You're right. I was just reading about how the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche saw Dionysus as a symbol of unrestrained will and primal energy.
That's right. Nietzsche contrasted the Dionysian principle with the Apollonian principle.
And for those unfamiliar, Apollo was the god of
reason, order, and logic.
And Dionysus represented the opposite.
The opposite: emotion, instinct, and creative chaos.
And Nietzsche saw the tension between these two principles as a driving force in art and creativity.
He did.
So for Nietzsche, Dionysus represents that wild creative impulse.
Yes.
That breaks free from societal constraints and allows for true self-expression.
Exactly. And this interpretation of Dionysus as a force of liberation and creative energy continues to resonate with artists and thinkers today.
Wow.
We see his influence in literature, music, art,
wow,
and even contemporary philosophy.
So the influence of Dionysus has taken many forms throughout history.
It has.
Adapting and evolving to fit different cultural contexts.
Right.
It's not just about direct depictions of the god himself.
That's not.
It's about tapping into those deeper universal themes that he represents.
Yes.
Ecstasy, liberation, the creative impulse.
The creative impulse.
The confrontation with our shadow selves.
Exactly. And it's important to note that the Dionysian isn't just about hedonism or reckless abandon.
Right.
It's about acknowledging the full spectrum of human experience, embracing our instincts and emotions, even the darker, challenging ones,
yeah,
and using them as fuel for creativity and self-discovery.
It's about recognizing that there's beauty and power in those raw, untamed aspects of ourselves.
Raw, untamed aspects.
Even if they make us uncomfortable or challenge societal norms.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's a reminder that true liberation often involves confronting our shadows.
Wow.
Embracing our complexities.
Okay.
And finding a way to integrate them into our lives in a healthy and creative way.
That's a really powerful idea.
It is.
It makes me think that the appeal of Dionysus even today lies in his ability to speak to those parts of ourselves.
Yes.
That we often try to suppress or deny.
Perhaps that's why he remains such an enigmatic and compelling figure.
Right.
He embodies the mystery of human nature.
Okay.
The interplay of light and shadow.
Yeah.
The dance between creation and destruction that lies at the heart of existence itself.
It sounds like we've only scratched the surface of what there is to learn about Dionysus.
We have.
This deep dive has been truly eye-opening.
It has.
And I'm eager to keep exploring, but before we get too carried away, let's recap some of the key things we've uncovered so far about this god of wine, revelry, and so much more.
Absolutely. Where should we begin?
Well, first of all, it's clear that Dionysus was definitely not your average god.
He was not.
He embodies contradictions, encompassing both the light and shadow sides of human nature.
Yes.
The joy of celebration and the destructive potential of untamed forces.
That's right.
We've also learned about his mysterious name.
That mysterious name.
Which might even have links to cultures predating the ancient Greeks.
Predating the ancient Greeks.
Adding another layer of intrigue to his already complex persona.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget his fascinating epithets.
The epithets.
Each one offering a glimpse into a different facet of his personality.
Right.
From the wild foxskin wearer to the enigmatic cowborn.
And
the somewhat terrifying man-destroyer.
Man-destroyer.
Those epithets remind us that Dionysus wasn't a one-dimensional figure.
He wasn't.
He was worshipped in diverse ways.
Very diverse ways.
Reflecting the multifaceted nature of his domain.
Yes.
And the human experience itself. We've also delved into his wild and wonderful festivals.
The festivals.
From the celebratory rural Dionysia to the more complex Amphisteria.
Right.
Which honored both new life and the return of the dead.
Yes.
And let's not forget the secretive Bacchic mysteries, which initiates a path to personal transformation and a deeper understanding of life's mysteries.
And those mysteries continue to intrigue us today as we try to piece together the fragments of information we have about these ancient rituals.
And of course, we can't overlook the rich and symbolic myths that surround Dionysus.
The myths.
From his dramatic birth stories to his daring descent into the underworld.
The underworld.
Those stories aren't just entertaining.
No, they're not.
They're packed with symbolism. Offering us insights into ancient Greek thought. Their understanding of the cosmos. And the human condition. We've seen how those myths, with their themes of death and rebirth.
Yes.
Transformation and ecstasy. Continue to resonate with us today.
They do.
Influencing art, literature, philosophy.
All of that.
And our understanding of the human psyche.
Absolutely. It's remarkable how these ancient stories still have so much to teach us.
They really do.
And speaking of learning, I believe we have much more to uncover about Dionysus.
Oh, really?
Particularly his influence on Western thought and art.
You're right. We've only just begun to scratch the surface of this fascinating god.
We've only just begun.
But I think that's a perfect place to pause for now.
I agree. We've covered a lot of ground, and it's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Perhaps our listeners need a moment to let all this new information sink in.
Exactly. And when we return, we'll delve even deeper into the legacy of Dionysus.
Yes.
And explore how his influence continues to shape our world today.
I can't wait.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back. I'm eager to continue our exploration of Dionysus. Last time we left off discussing how his influence extends beyond the realm of mythology.
Yeah, we were just starting to touch on how he's inspired artists, writers, and thinkers throughout history.
And it's not just about direct representations of Dionysus in art or literature.
Right.
It's about the themes he embodies.
Okay.
Ecstasy, liberation, the creative impulse, the confrontation with the darker aspects of human nature.
Yeah.
Themes that continue to resonate with us on a deep level.
It's fascinating to think how a figure from ancient mythology can still have such a powerful presence in contemporary culture. So where do we see his influence most prominently?
One area is definitely the arts. particularly theater.
Theater.
Remember, Dionysus was also the god of theater.
Right.
And the city Dionysia festival in Athens was renowned for its dramatic competitions.
Right. It's incredible to think that the roots of Western theater can be traced back to those ancient celebrations in honor of Dionysus.
It speaks to the enduring power of storytelling and performance as ways to explore the human condition,
Okay.
to grapple with complex emotions, and to connect with something larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And these are themes that run throughout Dionysian mythology and continue to resonate with us today.
I'm thinking about the Greek tragedies, for example.
What tragedies?
Many of them deal with themes of fate, free will, the consequences of our actions.
Yes.
Ideas that are deeply rooted in Dionysian mythology.
Exactly. The tragedies often explore the tension between our desires and our responsibilities.
Okay.
The consequences of giving into our passions and the struggle to find meaning in a world where suffering is inevitable.
Right.
These are all themes that echo the dual nature of Dionysus and the mysteries he represents.
It's like the ancient Greeks were using these plays to work through some of the same questions and dilemmas that we still grapple with today.
I think so.
And it's not just in theater, we see Dionysian themes in literature, music, visual art, across all forms of creative expression.
Absolutely. The Romantic poets, for example, were drawn to the idea of the Dionysian as a source of creative inspiration,
Okay.
a force that breaks through societal constraints and allows for authentic self-expression. And this fascination continues into the modern era. Think about the works of artists like Nietzsche, who saw in Dionysus a symbol of the will to power,
Wow.
or even someone like Jim Morrison,
Jim Morrison.
who embodied that rock star persona, that fusion of creativity and rebellion that often gets labeled as Dionysian.
So the influence of Dionysus has taken many forms throughout history.
Many forms.
Adapting and evolving to fit different cultural contexts. It's not just about direct depictions of the god himself.
Right.
It's about tapping into those deeper universal themes that he represents: ecstasy, liberation, the creative impulse, the confrontation with our shadow selves.
Precisely. And it's important to note that the Dionysian isn't just about hedonism or reckless abandon.
Right.
It's about acknowledging the full spectrum of human experience,
Right.
embracing our instincts and emotions, even the dark or challenging ones,
Yeah.
and using them as fuel for creativity and self-discovery.
It's about recognizing that there's beauty and power in those raw, untamed aspects of ourselves.
Yes.
Even if they make us uncomfortable or challenge societal norms.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that true liberation often involves confronting our shadows,
Right.
embracing our complexities, and finding a way to integrate them into our lives in a healthy and creative way.
That's a really powerful idea.
It is a powerful idea.
It makes me think that the appeal of Dionysus even today lies in his ability to speak to those parts of ourselves that we often try to suppress or deny.
Perhaps that's why he remains such an enigmatic and compelling figure. He embodies the mystery of human nature,
Yeah.
the interplay of light and shadow, the dance between creation and destruction that lies at the heart of existence itself.
And he invites us to participate in that dance.
He does.
To embrace the fullness of life with all its complexities and contradictions.
It's a reminder that there's more to life than just order and reason, that there's a wild, untamed energy within us that longs to be expressed, and perhaps by tapping into that energy, we can unlock new levels of creativity, self-awareness, and connection with the world around us.
This deep dive into the world of Dionysus has been incredibly insightful. I'm starting to see his influence everywhere I look in art, music, literature, even in the ways we celebrate and connect with each other.
It's a testament to the enduring power of myth and its ability to shape our understanding of ourselves and the world.
It makes you wonder, if Dionysus were to walk among us today, where would we find him? Would we recognize him?
That's a thought-provoking question. If we think about the qualities he represents, creative expression, uninhibited joy, the celebration of life in all its messy glory, perhaps we could find glimpses of him in those places where people gather to express themselves freely, to connect with their passions, to celebrate life in all its forms.
Maybe we'd find him at a music festival, lost in the rhythm of the crowd, or in a theater, witnessing the raw emotions of a powerful performance.
Or perhaps we'd encounter him in those quiet moments of creative inspiration, when an idea sparks in our minds, or when we lose ourselves in the beauty of nature.
Maybe we'd even find him in those moments of social and political upheaval, when people are fighting for justice, for freedom, for the right to express themselves authentically.
That's a really interesting connection after all. The Bacchanalia, with its challenge to social norms and embrace of uninhibited expression, was seen as a threat to the established order.
So perhaps the spirit of Dionysus can be found wherever people are pushing boundaries, questioning authority, and demanding the right to live their lives fully and authentically.
It's a reminder that the Dionysian impulse isn't just about partying or having a good time, it's about challenging the status quo, embracing our individuality, and creating a world where everyone has the freedom to express themselves fully.
This has been an incredible journey of discovery, and I feel like we've only just begun to uncover the mysteries of Dionysus.
There's always more to explore, more layers to peel back, and that's the beauty of it, isn't it? The exploration never truly ends.
You're right. It's like we've been given a key to unlock a whole new way of seeing the world, a way of understanding ourselves and our place in the grand tapestry of existence.
And perhaps that's the greatest gift Dionysus has, to offer us the invitation to embrace the fullness of life, to celebrate our creativity, to acknowledge our shadows, and to dance with the wild, untamed energy that flows through us all.
That's a beautiful thought to leave our listeners with, but before we wrap up this episode, I'd love to recap some of the key takeaways from our exploration of Dionysus. What are some of the most important things you think our listeners should remember?
I think one of the key takeaways is that Dionysus isn't just a god of wine and revelry. He's a complex and multifaceted figure who embodies the duality of human nature, the interplay of light and shadow, the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth.
He represents both the liberating and destructive forces that shape our lives, and he invites us to embrace the fullness of our experience, both the joyful and the painful.
Another key takeaway is the enduring power of myth and its ability to illuminate profound truths about the human condition. The stories surrounding Dionysus, passed down through generations, offer us insights into ancient Greek thought, their understanding of the cosmos, and their exploration of universal themes like love loss and the search for meaning.
Those myths continue to resonate with us today, inspiring artists, writers, and thinkers, and prompting us to reflect on our own lives and the world around us.
And finally, I think it's important to remember that the influence of Dionysus extends far beyond the realm of mythology. We see his legacy in art, music, literature, theater, and even in the ways we celebrate and connect with each other.
He represents the creative impulse, the desire for liberation, the embrace of our instincts and emotions, and the courage to challenge societal norms and embrace our individuality.
His story reminds us that there's more to life than just following the rules and conforming to expectations. There's a wild, untamed energy within each of us that longs to be expressed.
And perhaps by tapping into that energy, we can unlock new levels of creativity, self-awareness, and connection with the world around us.
So as we raise a glass to Dionysus, or perhaps a cup of coffee, depending on the time of day,
Yeah.
let's remember the lessons he has to teach us.
Let's embrace the power of creativity, the importance of community, and the cyclical nature of life itself.
And most importantly, let's never forget to have a little fun along the way.
That's great advice. This deep dive into the world of Dionysus has been truly enlightening. But remember, this is just the beginning.
There's always more to discover, more layers to peel back, and more insights to uncover.
So I encourage you to keep exploring these sources, to delve deeper into the myths and rituals, and to draw your own conclusions about this fascinating and enigmatic god. Who knows, you might even encounter a bit of Dionysian magic in your own life. Until next time, keep diving deep. We've learned so much about Dionysus in this deep dive.
We have.
It's remarkable how one god can be connected to so many different things. Wine revelry theater, the underworld, human nature.
It really highlights how complex and multifaceted he is.
And what's amazing to me is how relevant these ancient stories and ideas still feel today.
I agree.
Like the ancient Greeks were asking some of the same big questions about life, death, and the human condition that we still wrestle with.
It's the power of myth, isn't it? It speaks to these universal truths that go beyond time and culture.
And Dionysus seems to really embody that tension we all feel between order and chaos, you know?
Yeah, that push and pull between restraint and liberation.
Exactly.
It's something we all experience.
He reminds us that there's beauty and power in both the light and shadow sides of ourselves.
Right.
And that maybe true wholeness comes from embracing every part of who we are.
Embracing all of it.
It's a challenging idea, but it's also a really liberating one, you know?
Yeah, it is.
It makes me think about how often we try to hide or deny those parts of ourselves that don't fit in with what society expects.
It's easy to try to suppress those parts.
But Dionysus shows us a different way. Maybe it's about finding ways to integrate those shadow aspects.
Integrate.
To channel that wild energy into something creative.
Use it as fuel.
If Dionysus were to walk among us today, how would we even recognize him?
It makes you wonder.
Where would we see his influence?
Well, if we think about the qualities he embodies,
Okay.
ecstasy, liberation, creativity, confronting those darker parts of ourselves.
Right.
Maybe we'd see glimpses of him in places where people are pushing boundaries, breaking free, and expressing themselves authentic.
So maybe at a music festival.
Yeah, lost in the music.
Or even a protest.
Where people are demanding to be heard.
So it's not just about outward expressions of revelry or rebellion. It's about that inner fire.
That drive.
That urge to create, to connect, to really live life to the fullest.
That's Dionysus.
What an incredible journey this has been.
It has.
I feel like I have a completely different understanding of Dionysus now.
And his enduring influence.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
If Dionysus were to give us a challenge, what would it be?
A challenge.
What would he want us to take away from his story?
I think he would challenge us to embrace the fullness of life, to explore our creative potential, to question what we think we know, and to find joy in the unexpected.
He would remind us that life is a dance.
A celebration.
And that we should never be afraid to let loose, to get a little wild, and to be our true selves.
Absolutely.
To seek out experiences that make us feel alive, to connect with people in ways that matter, and to never stop questioning, exploring, and growing.
To keep evolving.
And maybe most importantly, he'd encourage us to find that balance between order and chaos.
Reason and intuition.
Restraint and liberation.
It's a delicate balance.
It is, but in that balance,
yeah,
we discover our true potential and create a life that is both meaningful and fulfilling.
That's beautifully said.
It's a great reminder that the journey of self-discovery never really ends.
It's a lifelong journey.
And it's a journey we can all take no matter who we are or where we come from.
We're all on that journey.
So let's raise a glass or maybe a cup of coffee to Dionysus, the god of wine, revelry, and so much more.
To Dionysus.
The god who encourages us to live fully and to dance to the beat of our own wild hearts.
Wild hearts.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Dionysus.
It's been a pleasure.
Remember, this is just the beginning of your exploration. Keep diving deep, keep questioning, and keep discovering.
Until next time.
Until next time.